quite some distances to cover here this afternoon, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to Tore Tronfold for those words from Sen and Senelec. Sharing best practice is definitely keywords there, and thank you also for alerting us to that anniversary of the new approach. Obviously, the voluntary nature of standards, which is also one of the key messages that we are hoping to transmit during the proceedings this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much also once again to Madam Minister and to Vicky Ford. Those were all very interesting and rounded opening addresses, and it's time for us now to lay the foundations of our discussions here today and also to define our specific focus on the construction sector. Standards, as we know and as has been mentioned, are everywhere, determining what we can expect from our bicycle helmets to the size of my cards here to perhaps our mobile phones, or maybe even the level of services that you'll get from the tour guide that you might book to go have a look around Riga when all of this is over, if you're lucky. In addition to providing guidelines and technical specifications, standards ideally facilitate everything from best practice to product design to interoperability and compatibility among products from different manufacturers, as we've also already heard, and thus ideally they do foster competition. Now, considering all of this for the construction sector in particular, I'd like to start off with a question just to get us warmed up, ladies and gentlemen. You will have been given a couple of cards on the way in the door. Can everybody pull these up? One green and one red. We'd like to make this a little bit interactive here today if we can. I promise not to torture you. But it's very easy to see that green is code for yes and red is code for no. We'd like to start off just with a very basic question to see where we stand at the beginning of the proceedings, and we might just have a look at how we're doing at the end. Do you think the European Standardization System already provides tools for a clean and smart economy? Let's see a show of cards. Well, this is, of course, good news for the standards camp, most of whom are populating the room, but I do see a number of red cards in there. So we'll see if we can become more enlightened on this point during our summit here this afternoon and have a sea of green. So that'll be exciting. We'll see what happens there. I think you'll agree that it's important that the tools that we have get used and that people know that they exist. This is one of the problems that we keep hearing mentioned. And of course, that all sectors can support their implementation. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, some studies have shown that many companies are often unaware of the strategic significance of standards. How to change this, how to improve this, and what needs to be done in order to come close to those ambitious 2020 goals? Well, we're very honored that our first speaker for our next introductory session is from the European Commission. And in light of these questions, she has some words on their expectations and, of course, on how they can help contribute to bringing standards forwards. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kerstin Jona. She's Director, Industrial Property, Innovation and Standards at DG GROW. And let's give her the floor.
Thank you very much. Minister, presidents of different standardization organizations and the European organizations, dear Elena and team, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start with an anecdote. And that anecdote is about the Spitzenkandidaten, which were running for the job of Commission President. And so did, and a number of other commissioners, our commissioners also ran for their mandates. And as they were in campaign, they went out and they spoke to citizens and companies in the different member states. And many of them, including our president, Jean-Claude Juncker, had been in the European business for a long time, and they knew all the decisions they had taken, the rules, the improvements that they had made. But when they came out to talk to people on the campaign trail, people told them, I don't want your rules, or your rules I never heard of, or your rules, they just don't work. So that was quite an experience. And in fact, it confirmed what Jacques Delors said, people do not fall in love with a single market. And the experience with these common rules that make the single market for companies and citizens often is also disappointing. This experience from these anecdotes had two ripple effects, I would say, in the new Commission, and the Juncker Commission, which took office last year. The first is the creation of a new directorate, which I'm heading. It's called Single Market Policy, Implementation and Regulation. And I would say it's a kind of after-sales department for EU legislation. Market surveillance, compliance dialogues, and yes, infringement procedures. But also standardization. And the second ripple effect, I would say, and that was already mentioned by the previous speakers, is the rediscovery of European standardization. Because what standards have in common and over and above European regulation is that they have a built-in ownership. Because you build in the stakeholder participation, you build in the company's standards, it's industry for industry, consumers, SMEs, and other organizations are present. And many people can imagine today standardization and standards not only as a complement in support of legislation for the single market, but also as alternative to rulemaking. So you see that 30 years, and I'm grateful for Tore already mentioning it, 30 years after the new approach, this Commission has fallen again in love with standards. And actually, it's not only the Commission, it's also the Council. The Competitiveness Council adopted conclusions, strong conclusions, half a year ago, which insist on the role of standards in a modern single market. Of course, young love may sometimes be somewhat overwhelming. There are great expectations, there are different lovers courting the bride, and there's a certain temptation to reinvent the wheel. But it's very clear that Commissioner Bieńkowska, who's our commissioner in charge of the single market, wants to use the momentum and the enthusiasm around standards to build up the partnership between the European Commission and the actors of the European standardization system. We want to reinvigorate the strong and trusted public-private partnership that has united us ever since the old days of the new approach. The system is based on trust, and that makes it indeed unique in the world. The legislator trusts you, the standard-setting organizations. The members of the standard-setting organizations trust each other. Consumers trust their products based on standards, and companies trust in the standards they used, presumption of conformity. The key elements of the system: voluntary, industry-driven, market-relevant, inclusive. Now, I would like to see with you, explore a bit where this new partnership will take us, or the partnership could take us in the coming years. First of all, I'd like to underline, and I think that is shared by all of you in the room, that the direction has not shared. We need standards in support of legislation. We need standards to give a competitive advantage to European companies, the first mover advantage, and we need global impact. President Juncker, when he presented the 10 priorities for his team for the 5 years, or the 4 years still to go, he spoke about a deeper and fairer single market. And that's, in fact, the target we have to deliver to. I would like to touch on some, but of course not exclusive, but some of the trends that we see in the single market and that I believe require our joint attention. Some of them are already mentioned. Smart. The digitalization of all sectors is necessary in order to keep the EU competitive and to keep the strong industrial base. We need to manage the transition to smart industries and service communities to advance manufacturing. That was my previous job, so I know about that. And the construction sector is also part of this. The ICT conquers the construction sector. Traditional houses and buildings now are smart. Electrical appliances are interconnected. They exchange information, they analyze information, i.e. my fridge orders the eggs before I know I forgot them, and it all can be controlled remotely. And from smart buildings, we can go to smart cities. Enhanced functionalities of objects, built-in digital components, large-scale data capturing, all of this is the future. And that is why one of the first flagships that were adopted under the new Commission is the Digital Single Market communication. And one of the key actions in this is related to standards, because it talks about the pipeline for setting priorities for standardization, a standard prioritization plan for ICT. Next trend, clean. Was also already mentioned, the minister said green. European standards help realizing the objective of resource efficiency. Standards support the implementation of EU legislation on efficiency of buildings. They offer methods to calculate energy performance of buildings, and they support member states to meet the minimum energy requirements that they have to meet by the 2020 strategy. There's also work going on the climate resilience of built infrastructure. I personally was very much involved in 2000 when there were the big flooding all across Europe, and I was working on regional policy at the time, and we invented the Solidarity Fund to give support to member states that are hit by such natural catastrophes. But it's true, and that's why your standards will help. It's always better to prevent than to heal. Another trend I find important, and was already mentioned as well, the convergence between products and services. Increasingly, and that's called demand-driven innovation, products are sold with a service in it. You buy the airplane, but in fact, you pay for the maintenance services that are for the airplane, or cars, another example. Again, we have to look at the two elements, products and services. Services clearly seems to be and is, I think, the new frontier, but not on everything and not everywhere. The event organized by Andreas Schwab was already mentioned. There was another event organized by DIN and the German government on a roadmap for service standardization. It's important that we identify and scope and see where service standardization can be a complement to the legislation that we have, be they European or national. And I really count on you to continue to work with us and following the mandate, the first scoping mandate that you've already been working on. Prosumer. I am increasingly not only consuming, but actively producing. The 3D printer is the best example. I print what I need, my pizza or something else. But it applies in particular to decentralized energy production, and I think the prosumer will be very important in this area. The consumer produces energy. We need smart metering, smart interfaces, smart grids. So these are some of the trends that I see for the next years to come and which have to be addressed urgently. And I think there is some work to do for us together. How do we want to take this partnership forward now? We want to face the challenges together with you, and the European Standardization Regulation is the fundament of our partnership. How do we build on it, as we're speaking about construction? I want to talk with all of you on the 1st of July meeting of the Friends of Standardization. We will present the results of the independent review process, But most importantly, we want to hear your views about this. Could we imagine or identify elements for an agreement, a deal, pact, contribution of standardization for bringing about this deeper and fairer single market that President Juncker has called for? The discussions that we will have around the 1st of July and your contributions before, during and after will also feed into the single market strategy that the College will adopt in probably in November, which is another milestone of delivering the 10 priorities of President Juncker. In these discussions, I see quite some potential for talking about priority pipelines, information flows, awareness, interaction between all levels, transmission belts for innovation, and plenty of other ideas out of the box. Please feel free to share your ideas with us, and not only on the 1st of July, but also around. The Commission, my team, and I personally, we want to be your partner in making standardization do a contribution to turning Europe into a better place to live and work. To take European standardization to the next generation, I quote, but I don't reveal from whom, maybe you'll hear it still today, and with the next generation. So, that takes me to my conclusion. I opened on an anecdote. I wanted to close with a fairy tale, but Karin already took the fairy tale. The magnificent building we are in which we are gathering today by invitation of the Latvian Presidency is, as was already mentioned, called the Castle of Light. Now, in Latvian folklore, a crystal mountain symbolizes the height of achievement, something not easily attainable, but full of rewards for those who make the commitment to reach its peak. Latvian literature and folklore also speak of the Castle of Light as a metaphor for wisdom that has been lost, but will rise again from the depth of the Daugava River. Presidency, you could not have chosen a better place to discuss this on the future of standardization. I'm truly grateful for having given us the opportunity to have this discussion in such an inspiring venue, and I hope that the Castle of Light approach will guide also our discussions in the months to come. I'm looking forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Kerstin Jonna for those words representing the Juncker Commission and for underlining the importance of standards for them to support legislation and some very important trends, obviously, that we will be touching on today. Convergence of products and services, very important, and the emergence of the prosumer, also an interesting one. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, let's have another question. Get out your cards, red, green, yes, no, because we're going to be learning things as we go along with all of these presentations. Is it right, I'm going to ask you, to estimate that some 200,000 experts are connected with the SEN-CENELEC network? How many people can you trust out there in this game? Is it right? 200,000? More, less? We're not quite as sure about this one as we were about the first one, although the greens are coming up, but I always see at least a good dozen red cards in there. We'll have some answers coming up for you in our very next presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, next up we'd like to learn more about the standardization response to the agenda of going cleaner and smarter. And our next speaker is Guðrún Rögnvaldardóttir. She's Vice President Technical of SEN. Standards for a Smarter and Cleaner Europe is the title of her talk, and she'll be speaking in detail about the value of standards delivered today and also outline your breakout sessions for this afternoon. So Guðrún, the lectern is yours, the floor is yours. Give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having the opportunity to speak to you here and to tell you a little bit about our work in standardization and how we develop standards for a smarter and cleaner Europe. If we should summarize the European standardization system, it is one word. It would be unique. Indeed, as has already been explained, through the European standardization system, one single standard is used in all countries of SEN and CENELEC, all member countries. This system guarantees market harmonization. So the example that the minister took at the beginning, saying that we have 8 competing standards and we want to develop one to combine all of that, and then we have 9 competing standards. No, we don't have that situation in Europe, because when a European standard has been developed, all conflicting standards in the member countries have to be withdrawn, so that there's only one single standard, one single solution that is in force all over Europe. And this is unique. This sets out our system and differentiates it from other systems in other parts of the world, as CENELEC President already explained. So what are the benefits of the users of standards? Well, standards, as has been explained already, they are voluntary, they are business-led, they are market-driven. They are inclusive, open, and consensus-based, so that all interests have to be taken into account when developing a standard. They're recognized, as has been already emphasized here, they're recognized as a tool by public authorities and regulations, in particular through the new approach, and happy anniversary to the new approach and to all of us. They have a strong international dimension through the agreements that SEN and CENELEC have with ISO and IEC respectively. They are developed through a huge network of experts. They are a must for industries and large-scale industries, and not least SMEs, because standards really do make it easier for SMEs to get the products on the market. They do prevent vendor lock-in, and by that is meant that a vendor lock-in is when a customer has been made dependent on one vendor for products and services and is unable to use another vendor without substantial switching costs, and standardization prevents this. Standards also create markets for innovative products and services. And what are the benefits for participants, those who take part in developing standards? Well, they can be sure that the standards will give compliance with the regulations and market expectations. Standards that harmonized standards give this compliance. They promote products and services. They facilitate both domestic and also foreign trade, especially within Europe, but also increasingly internationally, because many of the European standards are also international standards. They facilitate transfer of technology. They provide information on market trends to those participating in the work. They are a great platform for networking, for meeting the providers, competitors, authorities, and professionals in a specific field. And they give certainty for investment, for coherence, appropriate technologies, and markets. And standards do give a new dimension to the European market. The digital single market, or digital single market for products and services, for more than 600 million consumers, as well as businesses within Europe, but also with a reach out to the global market. And now we come to the SEN and CENELEC network. Yes, indeed, there are more than 200,000 experts connected. We have 800 participants from European industry federations and societal stakeholders. We have something like 30,000 delegates and experts in SEN and CENELEC in technical committees. 55,000 delegates and experts in ISO and IEC technical committees, and we have an estimated 160,000 participants through the national members of SEN and SENELEC, because SEN and SENELEC consist of national members and national committees from those 33 countries, and each of the members or national committees has a good network at home, so there we have all those national experts participating at national level. If we now go to interlinking the separate initiatives, one of the main characteristics of standardization today is that separate initiatives are more and more interlinked. And a good example is standardization for sustainable cities. And SEN and SENELEC have developed already quite a number of families of standards in support of smart and sustainable cities in various domains, such as those shown there on the slide: smart grids, waste and water, mobility, societal security and security of the infrastructures, smart management systems, accessibility, smart services, smart homes and buildings. And in such an interlinked world, standardization can provide guidelines, specifications and requirements for system and management aspects, and these will contribute to the development of good practices and accelerate the move towards more efficient, more livable and sustainable cities. Of course, there is a strong need for a holistic and horizontal approach encompassing all relevant sectors. The complexity and the interlinking approach is also found within each of these various areas of standardization. For example, if we take the smart homes and buildings area and go one layer deeper, there we can see that within the smart homes and buildings area, we also find a series of interlinked domains where standardization is active. Water management, we have the EN 806 series on specifications for installations inside buildings, conveying water for human consumption. We have in asset and facilities management, the EN 15221 series on facility management, building information modeling. There's a newly set up CENTC 442, a building information modeling with a secretariat in Norway. Energy performance of buildings, more than 40 European standards are available. Sustainable construction, EN 15978 on sustainability of construction works, assessment of environmental performance of buildings, and another one, EN 15804, on sustainability of construction works, the environmental product declaration. For smart cities, we have the SEN-SENELEC ETSI coordination group called Smart and Sustainable Cities and Communities. It has been set up to advise on European interests and needs relating to the standardization within this domain. For the Eurocodes, the series of ENs numbered from 1990 to 1999 is dealing with the Eurocodes, and I'm sure many of you will know about these standards. And the CPR, the Construction Products Regulation, currently we have 444 harmonized European standards published with about 1,500 associated test methods. And through framing things in the OSI model, the picture becomes clear that SEN and SENELEC are active in all of the layers, from the hardware over operating system and middleware to services. And that is as far as our terms of reference allow us to go, and our consensus building principles enable us to go. We have some examples of standards on the slide. We have in layer 1, we have a standard on power, control and communication cables. In layers 2 and 3, we have standards on fixed firefighting systems and a standard on hardware performance sheets. In layers 4 and 5, the middleware, We have standards on transportation services, good transport chains, and vacuum drainage systems. And in layer 6 and 7, the services, we have a series of standards on home and building electronic systems, and of course the Eurocodes. Sorry, just went a little bit too far there. And from layer 8 to layer 10, that's the top layer, the roof of the house. These last 3 layers are directly linked to the requirements and framework set by the users. And speaking of smart cities, the missing factor for the moment being is indeed the requirements and border parameters of the users, whether they are national, regional, or urban authorities. And setting the framework would allow SEN and SENELEC to devise standards or adapt the existing ones to include options and classes, forming a portfolio of standards for mapping out sustainable and smart solutions. In other terms, input from cities is needed in order to allow standardization to move on. Within the European standardization system, 2 distinct elements are complementary. On the one hand, the mandatory requirements defined in regulations, policies, and laws, and on the other hand, the voluntary standardization system. And the bridge between these 2 elements is ensured through the standardization requests issued by the European Commission and EFTA to the European standards organizations. If we look into the 2 distinct elements of the European standardization system, as presented in the former slide, and in order to have an efficient European standardization system, we need, on the one hand, coherent EU regulatory initiatives and policies setting the mandatory frame, and on the other hand, the consensus-based standardization system of the ESOs setting the voluntary frame. And to further explore the interesting issue of standards for a smarter and cleaner Europe, these 4 breakout sessions that you can see there on the slides will be offered after the coffee break, and you can find the description of the scopes in your booklet, in your agenda. Session 1 is energy performance of buildings. Session 2, sustainable buildings. Session 3, building smart cities. And session 4 is building design and management. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Guðrún Rögnvaldardóttir from SEN for that overview. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point I have to announce an unfortunate change in our program. We regret to inform you that our speaker, Christoph Sykes, has been kept away by a cycling accident. He is the Director General of Construction Products Europe, and he was going to be speaking to us today about the business case for going clean and smart in the construction sector, so we will definitely miss the voice of the construction industry at this point in the program, but we're certainly hoping it's going to get enough airtime later on during the breakout sessions and then hopefully also in our final plenary discussion. So best wishes for a speedy recovery to Christoph Sykes, and we do wish he could have been here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard it mentioned already, and just last month the European Commission released its plan to create the digital single market. Now this would effectively standardize rules across 28 countries, as we've heard, for things like digital content and online services, e-commerce, etc. European standards, therefore, are poised to play a very, very important role and to shed some light on how they will contribute. We're delighted to have our next speaker from DG Connect. Viorel Peca is head of the Innovation Unit, Digital Economy and Coordination at DG Connect from the European Commission. So please give him a warm welcome, Mr. Peca.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting DG Connect to this event. It is a pleasure to be here, and for me personally, it's the first time in this beautiful city. Hope I'll have time to enjoy at least the city center. At the first impression, I am the odd one out in a line of speakers in an event focused on standardization in the construction sector, as we have heard. I think this is only at the first sight, and is indeed a testimony on how ICT and digital is impacting every industrial sector, construction industry included, but also us as an individual, and as we have heard, prosumer. Our life has gone digital indeed. If we all like it or not, that is a different story. With the publication of Digital Single Market Strategy, the European Commission has outlined an ambitious plan for boosting European economy by removing obstacles in the digital world that, for most, are not existing in the physical world. In particular relevant for this event and for you, the strategy recognized the importance of standardization and interoperability for the digital markets, be it between different digital components in a computer program, in the supply chain, or even between the industry and services, or between industry and public authorities. To say that the implementation of the DSM strategy is an important priority for Commission would be a big understatement. But I hope you will agree, even more important, it should be a priority for Europe, including therefore for member states. I really think DSM is a chance that Europe cannot miss. For this, support from member states is essential. Just to give you an example about what are we talking about. Looking at just one aspect, namely the digitization of traditional industry or Industry 4.0, in a recent report on this topic by Roland Berger Consulting, it is estimated that, and I quote, "The digital transformation of industry is creating tremendous opportunities for Europe and confronting it with huge challenges. By 2025, Europe could see its manufacturing industry add gross value worth 1.25 trillion euros, or alternatively suffer the loss of 605 billion euros in foregone value added. And these figures are only for 15 EU countries plus Norway and Turkey, in other words, 17 out of 30. I'll let you to do the extrapolation. DSM strategy puts forward two concrete initiatives to boost competitiveness through interoperability and standardization. A priority ICT standardization plan and what we call an EU catalog to boost interoperability. European Commission will adopt by end of 2015 a priority ICT standardization plan, which will include standardization roadmaps for DSM strategic areas like 5G, Internet of Things, cloud computing, big data, and cybersecurity. And for key sectors like e-health, intelligent transport system, and advanced manufacturing. I hope you will agree having this priority action plan defined and approved by end of this year will be very challenging indeed. But more important, I hope we'll use this opportunity to improve the competitiveness of European industry and also improve the European standardization system. European catalog will try to address the fragmentation in the digital market by supporting procurers with a well-structured and pan-European repository of ICT recommended standards and technical specification, including the guidelines on how to use them. By increasing the use of ICT standards and specification in public procurement or even procurement in general, we will address, hopefully, not only the fragmentation and interoperability, but also address the issue of vendor lock-in, as well as better value for money and improvement of SME access to procurement market, which in Europe is valued at 90% of GDP or 2,000 billion euro per year. For both initiatives, an inclusive model will be adopted with multi-stakeholder platform or MSP playing an important role, and of course member states and European standardization organizations will have a special position. Moreover, these two initiatives will be consistent with the ICT standardization rolling plan. For this, but also other initiatives in the rolling plan, it is very important to improve the cooperation. not only between Senelec, Senelec and ETSI, but also with what we call fora and consortia. In fact, global standardization organizations like IATF, IEEE, W3C, to name just a few. We have indeed a few examples of good collaboration, of good cooperation. ITS, or Intelligent Transport System, is such an example where SEN brought the view of road authorities, traffic managers, and suppliers of roadside devices. But we need more, much more if, for example, Internet of Things or IoT standardization is to become a European success. For this, we need an inclusive standardization system with the vertical industries collaborating with telecom industry in SEN, ETSI, or 1M, 2M. It is not only important, I think it's crucial. Another important aspect, if we were to succeed, is to bridge the gap between research and standardization, including via pre-normative activities. Involvement of participants from Horizon 2020 consortia in standardization activity, as well as facilitating this involvement by the European Standardization Organization, is an absolute must. From DG Connect, or even the Commission, I think, we did a good effort. You might have noticed that the first work program of Horizon 2020 contained a lot of reference and requirement for standardization. And in some cases, even dedicated support projects were called in areas like 5G. The new work program, soon to be approved, is no exception. I know that Senelec Secretariat has excellent trainings, and put a lot of effort in supporting this research, and we are very grateful for that. Yet, I think we need more than that. We need structures like industry special groups and light standardization deliverable that are consistent with the quick nature of innovation activity. Last but not least, GRC can and should be allowed to play a bigger role in technical committees and other technical bodies. Let me, towards the end, reflect on the importance of international standardization. It is indeed critical that European specialists participate in international standardization activity, for example, through Vienna Agreement, but not only. ICT industry is global, which call for global standards or for European standards to become global. For this, it is crucial to promote these standards at global level, including in a few big markets like China, India, and Brazil. In this respect, the EU-India project on ICT standardization, supported by European External Action Service and run by Klaus Pendel with support from ETSI, is a good example of best practice. Last but not least, I would like to talk about speed, or some of you prefer timeliness. In the digital world, time is of the essence, and ICT standardization cannot be an exception, even if it's the one that confirms the rule. Within the time, there is a high risk of failure and irrelevance of European standardization system in ICT domain, with important consequences for our industry and even our own welfare. In this respect, I think we have some work to do. Let's take advantage of ICT technology in the 21st century to speed up also the standardization processes and look for process optimization. There are some good examples, as we have seen in ETSI recently, but more can be done. Translation and members or even member states consultation could take less time by using ICT. Indeed, what once took days or weeks today could take minutes or in general much less. Also, perhaps your unitary patent can offer some good hints. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to present DG Connect views for DSM in the standardization domain. I'm looking forward to discuss more during the day, and I will participate to the Senelec General Assembly. I know that the most welcome speeches are short, therefore I thank you very much for your attention and looking forward for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much to Viorel Peca from DG Connect for a very timely presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, this is good news. We haven't even made it very far, and already I've got good news, because speaking of speed, which you've just mentioned, since the very beginning of our proceedings here today, trending on Twitter is standards. We've become a trending topic. So give yourselves a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are, making some progress already from the Castle of Light here in Riga. We've reached, at the time I was informed of this, we'd reached well over 30,000 people, so obviously that reach will increase as the day goes along. So good news for our communications issues. In our discussions, ladies and gentlemen, of the business case for standardization in the construction sector, obviously the question of cooperation and strategic alliances will be coming up. How do we get from research to standardization, as was just mentioned by Mr. Peca? How do we bridge that gap, and how to use this link effectively to stimulate innovation and to economize on information exchange? Well, our final speaker for this introductory session, ladies and gentlemen, is Stephan Lechner. He's director of the Institute for the Protection and Security of the Citizen at the Joint Research Centre. Now, that is the European Commission's very own science and technical support service. He's going to tell us some more about that Joint Research Centre and the landscape of research infrastructures around Europe. So please give him a very warm welcome, our final speaker for this session. Stephan Lechner.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the good news is, according to the official program of the Latvian presidency, the coffee break is only 2 minutes away. So I'm trying to stay short here. I would like to give you a brief outlook on why science is important for standardization, especially in the constructing sector. I would like to tell you how we are doing it at the European Commission's technical and scientific arm, and I would like to tell you what's in for you. So let's look at that Joint Research Centre just with a quick glance. It is actually not that much joint. It's not only doing research, and it's not a centre, so the term is very confusing. But the term originates from the Euratom Treaty in the late 50s, and we have gone multidimensional, multidisciplinary ever since. So the Joint Research Centre is doing scientific and technical support for the European Commission. It is an in-house service, therefore it is independent, so we're not flavored by national or industry views, but we're working in the principle like a funnel. We're connected at the top end to the scientific community, and we're then distilling the essence, and we're consulting the European policymakers in an independent way. I don't go in the details of that. I'm working out of northern Italy, Ispra, where traditionally we have a big site. And we have there also some, as you see, reference laboratories, centers and bureaus that are very well linked to standardization. The institute is there in Ispra. Let's just move on. And we have particularly the European Laboratory for Structural Assessment, the ELSA laboratory. And here's are some lab views where we have huge installations that are quite unique on the globe. A similar reaction wall as we're having in our lab of that dimension exists 3 times in the world. One I was told in San Diego, one in Japan, and one in the only European installation of that size at our facilities in Ispra. And ironically, the Japanese installation was damaged by an earthquake a couple of years back in time. I do not know anything about the current status. So this is a unique opportunity also for Europe. Innovation is key to new standards because standardization has one thing in common with the European Commission. It does not really have a reputation of being very fast. So in that sense, what we are developing and what we are working on is something that shall carry us into the future, and the standards that we are developing today will be valid for quite some time. So especially in the Eurocodes, where we have collaborated in the triangle between regulation and the standardization and the technical work, this is something that has taken quite some years. But it was very successful in the year 2010 when the Eurocodes replaced all national parameters. All national standards. The trick is, of course, with the nationally determined parameters in the Eurocodes that still do the job of adjusting them to national needs. So in principle, in the technical standards of the Eurocodes, we have realized the European motto, united in diversity, and that is very nice. Stimulating innovation is also on building bridges, literally here, where we have composite materials that are doing speedy bridge constructions here in the Prometeo project on the structural use of composite materials. The European Commission and the testing labs where the consortium has gone has also done a contribution. And as you can see, not only the political side, but all the scientists of the European Commission are able to exercise quite some pressure. This is a load test for a bridge element that we have done in our labs. And we have really played that test to see where the load limits are. And this is a unique thing that you cannot reproduce every so often. So the gap between research and standardization is really bringing these things from the labs into the standards and then finally into the market. The challenges will be for the second generation of the Eurocodes, because the first generation is out since 2010, which is 5 years now. And we've worked more than 15 years to get them done. All together, of course. But we will now see how the retrofitting of existing structures will be. We need to improve other sectors that are urgently important. And of course, we need to look into innovative technologies, things that have not been around when we drafted the first idea about the Eurocodes. But today we got new materials, we got innovative people in the industry that are getting things together. And standards are not really rigid and they are staying there forever. We need to just look into the future together with the standardization organizations and together with the colleagues that have the political mandate and that have also given literally mandates to the standardization organizations. So this gap will be bridged by collaboration. I've just drawn up a diagram here of how many partners work together in a big structural assessment framework program project, which was funded under the framework program 7, the SIRIUS project. So the team is distributed all across Europe. I think we're missing a Latvian or a Baltic component here, but this is just exemplary. And this is how we have collaborated in our laboratories where many, many different stakeholders gathered to then execute tests and assess the results all together. 11 countries, 23 partners in one single project. This one's done, but we need to move on. So the European infrastructures is nothing that is working behind closed doors. We would like to strategically open them up and provide value for the research community because the facilities are so unique. There is the plan for European strategic research infrastructures, and our big laboratory is going to be part of it. So a roadmap for defining all these big infrastructures and making them accessible for the general research community is out, and the European Commission will do that, and the European Union will do that in a more structured way than we did it over single projects in the past. The challenge for us is now to get this done. We would like to open the infrastructures formally far better for the research community and of course for industry, and there is a deadline for this, or a roadmap for that already. So from 2015, 2016, 2017, we are aiming at getting calls out and then also having you using the unique infrastructures if it is of value to you. Currently, the infrastructures are pretty much well booked already, so I can only recommend to take up contact to look into these things. And of course, the Joint Research Center will not be the only contributor to European large-scale research infrastructures. There will be many other partners as well. A forward look, quickly to conclude here, time's pressing. Reference test for new standards and new concepts, an open European database of the experimental results. Open data is a very crucial issue. And safe and resource-efficient construction and renovation. Resource-efficient is at least in the center here. But it's not only new build, it is also renovation of existing structures. We do have also the idea of smart and clean materials and technologies, and this is all about innovation again. And as you can see in the picture, there is a facade that has built-in photovoltaics already in the laminated glass, and which is really an innovative approach and takes me to the end of that short bridging the gap between research and innovation here. I would like to just leave one key message. If you're in the Castle of Light here, the Castle of Light of today might look like that and serve as a prototype for the Castle of Light that we can see on the slides here, where the Castle of Light is really also acting as a producer of light and as a consumer of energy. So this is a very emblematic idea of that environment here, again, for the future technologies that will bring us innovation and hopefully also stimulate the market. The European Commission's Joint Research Centre is part of that community already, will continue to be part of it, but would like to intensify its collaboration with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much to Stephan Lechner for making that very important link between research and standardization, and also give him an extra hand for being super speedy after we'd been reprimanded about speed. But of course, our program, like so much of our activity, is a living thing in flux, and I have the master coffee. So I am going to give you until 16:05 for your coffee break. We've had a lot of information so far, so hopefully some of it will sink in. You can do a little bit of connecting and networking, and let's meet back here at 16:05 for the beginning and the send-off to your afternoon sessions. Thanks for all your attention up until now, and enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. See you at 16:05.